Black CEO mocked by billionaire white family hours. Later, she erased their dollar. 900M legacy. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Hey Blackie, go serve! The words sliced through the laughter like a knife through glass. The chandeliers trembled with the echo of it, polished silver and white marble catching every flicker of humiliation. The ballroom shimmered in gold and arrogance. Ava Carter froze. The stem of her champagne glass caught the light, trembling slightly in her hand. Around her, the air shifted. Guests looked up from their laughter, curious, entertained. Margaret Fairmont, in a midnight blue gown and diamonds that screamed old money, leaned back in delight. Her husband chuckled. Their son smirked. Ava's skin glowed beneath the soft lights, brown against a pastel dress, elegance mistaken for servitude. "Did you hear me?" Margaret said louder, her voice sweet with venom. "Be a dear and top off our glasses. You're moving too slow for a server." Laughter rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Isn't she the investor from Carter Global?" Another voice, "Impossible. She doesn't look like 900 million. Ava said nothing. She placed the glass gently on the table, each movement measured, silent. Her pulse was steady, her eyes lifted calm, calculating. The same eyes that once stared down entire boards of men who thought she'd break. Margaret's husband, already half drunk on his own confidence, raised his glass. "Come on, darling, don't be shy. We're all friends here." Ava reached into her clutch, pulled out her phone. Her voice was low, smooth, and deliberate, a different kind of weapon. "Hi, Jordan," she said softly. "Yes. Cancel the 900 million deal." The room stilled. Even the violins faltered. Margaret blinked. "I'm sorry, what did you just?" Ava's eyes met hers. "You heard me." Silence crawled across the floor, slow and suffocating. The laughter died, replaced by the hum of chandeliers and the distant click of a phone camera, recording what everyone suddenly realized was not a joke. Ava slid the phone back into her clutch, her voice still even. "You should really choose your tone more carefully," she said. "Some words don't echo. They collapse. They said brains wrap around her." She turned, her heels tapping against marble, each step a metronome of composure. The crowd parted instinctively, the way waves move for a ship that doesn't even notice them. At the back of the room, a waiter stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or apologize for someone else's cruelty. Ava gave him a single nod, soft, acknowledging. Then she walked on. Behind her, Margaret forced a laugh. "Oh, lighten up, people. She's joking." But no one laughed this time. Someone near the piano whispered, "She just pulled out. The deal's gone." Ava didn't turn back. She didn't need to. The air was already different. Heavy, brittle, about to break. At the doorway, she paused only long enough to glance at the chandelier, its crystals scattering light like broken promises. "Funny," she murmured under her breath. "They always forget who signs the checks." The laughter didn't stop all at once. It fractured first into nervous chuckles, then into silence sharp enough to hear the ice settle in their glasses. Margaret Fairmont stood frozen, her manicured hands still midair, smile stiffening like porcelain cooling too fast. Around her, the ballroom dimmed beneath the weight of confusion. The pianist missed a note. The air felt wrong, too heavy for crystal and champagne. Ava Carter didn't look back. Her heels clicked across the marble. Slow, deliberate, each step a verdict. The chandeliers above her trembled slightly with the vibration. Guests parted instinctively, making room for the kind of woman they suddenly realized they should have recognized from the beginning. A young man near the bar whispered, "Wait, she's Carter Global?" Someone else stammered, "The one with the energy merger? The 900 million Carter Global?" The crowd shifted uneasily. The music tried to return, but no one was listening. Margaret forced a laugh, brittle and desperate. "Goodness, people are so sensitive these days. It was just a joke." Her husband joined in, but the echo of his voice fell flat against the tension. Even the servers hesitated, unsure whether to continue pouring champagne or quietly retreat. Across the room, Ava reached the glass doors leading to the terrace. For a brief moment, the golden light from inside met the cold blue night outside, two worlds colliding in reflection. Her face was calm, unreadable, her phone still glowing faintly in her hand. Jordan's text appeared on the screen. Confirmed, funds recalled. Media will pick it up in an hour. Ava typed two words. Let them learn. Inside, whispers grew louder. The Fairmont son stepped toward his mother. Mom, her company just pulled funding. The acquisition, it's gone. Is running that is no self, is no since his eye in action. Margaret blinked hard, her painted smile faltering. No, that's not possible. She wouldn't. She already did. The weight of that sentence silenced even the clinking of glasses. Someone dropped a napkin. The sound was louder than it should have been. Margaret turned toward the door, eyes darting to the spot where Ava had stood moments before. The space felt emptier now, not because someone had left, but because something greater had been removed. Certainty, hierarchy, illusion. A man from the board of Fairmont Energy cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. Perhaps we should... Margaret cut him off. No, we're fine. We'll fix it tomorrow. But the way her voice cracked betrayed her. Tomorrow had already started unraveling. Outside, Ava stood under the terrace lights, the city stretching beneath her like a map of consequence. Her breath made small clouds in the winter air. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of humiliation lift, replaced by something steadier, the calm of control returning to its rightful owner. Through the glass, she could still see them, a family of privilege framed in gold and fear. For years, they had built walls out of laughter, money, and polished cruelty. Tonight, a single word, cancel, had turned their fortress into paper. Ava slipped her phone back into her clutch. Her reflection merged with the city lights, quiet, poised, untouchable. She whispered, almost to herself, respect isn't requested, it's accounted for. And with that, she walked away from the light and into the night, not in defeat, but in balance. By morning, the city hadn't caught up yet, but the markets had. Somewhere between the glow of midnight and the chill of dawn, Carter Global had quietly pulled $900 million from the Fairmont Energy acquisition. It wasn't public yet, but people in boardrooms could already smell blood. In the penthouse above Michigan Avenue, Ava Carter stood before the tall glass windows, her reflection caught between sky and skyline. The early light turned her dress from soft pastel to molten gold. Behind her, the faint hum of her phone echoed in the quiet messages. Alerts, requests for confirmation. She didn't answer any of them. Her assistant, Jordan, appeared in the doorway holding a tablet. Her tone was steady, professional, but her eyes betrayed admiration. It's done. The withdrawal hit the wires at 6:15. By now, the Fairmont office knows. Ava didn't move. And the press? They'll know by 9. Once the analysts start asking why the deal disappeared. Ava nodded. Good. Let them connect the dots themselves. Truth is louder when it's discovered, not declared. Jordan hesitated. They're going to say it was retaliation. Ava turned, meeting her gaze. It wasn't. It was correction. The phone buzzed again this time. A name that used to matter, flashing across the screen. Margaret Fairmont. Ava let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then let it die. Outside, the city was waking. Buses hissed, people hurried, unaware that the balance of power had shifted overnight. On the giant LED screen across the street, a headline scrolled slowly. Rumors surround. $900M deal withdrawal, Carter Global silent. Silent. That word mattered. It wasn't absence. It was design. Meanwhile, in the Fairmont estate, chaos replaced champagne. Margaret sat at a long mahogany table, surrounded by advisors who spoke too quickly and understood too little. She's bluffing, one of them insisted. It's a negotiation tactic. Another shook his head. No, it's surgical. She didn't threaten. She acted. The funding's gone. Margaret slammed her hand on the table. We'll fix it. Call the banks, the auditors, anyone who'll take our call. But no one was taking them. In that moment, she remembered the exact tone of Ava's voice from the night before, calm, almost kind. The kind of tone people use before they sign your ending. A single phrase haunted her. Cancel the $900 million deal. No anger, no warning, just inevitability. She stood abruptly, her reflection fractured in the crystal cabinet beside her. Find her, she ordered. I'll apologize, We'll fix this face to face. The bloop in starting into a grom. Her husband, seated at the far end, looked at her quietly. Margaret, he said softly, you can't fix what was never broken for her. You broke yourself. Back in her office, Ava poured coffee, black and steady. Jordan watched her from across the room. You really won't issue a statement? Ava shook her head. Dignity doesn't need defense. Jordan smiled faintly. You know they'll paint you as the villain. They always do, Ava said, stirring once, then setting the spoon aside. But villains only exist in stories written by the powerful. Let's remind them who holds the pen now. She turned back to the window. The city reflected across her face, gold, blue, and infinite. Somewhere in that horizon, the world was rearranging itself. Not loudly, not violently, just precisely. And as she stood there, still as a verdict, the silence around her didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. The morning sun cut across the city like judgment, clear, cold, and unbothered. By 9:02 a.m., the news had broken. Every major outlet ran the same headline. Carter Global withdraws $900M from Fairmont deal markets react. Within minutes, Fairmont Energy stock began to plummet. Inside the Fairmont Tower, chaos roared. Assistants ran between offices with trembling hands, phones pressed to their ears. The trading screens flickered red, and the hum of panic grew louder than the sound of profit ever had. Margaret Fairmont stormed through the hallway, her heels striking marble like gunfire. Her assistant followed, breathless. Ma'am, Bloomberg wants a statement. CNBC too. Margaret's voice cracked under the weight of denial. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. We're still in talks with Carter Global. Same have God have menacing of same. It is hotability same the capital of the samen. But I'll do it. She burst into the boardroom, where her son, Ethan, and the CFO stood in grim silence. Well? She demanded. Ethan's phone buzzed, and he turned it toward her. A social media clip played grainy footage from the gala last night. Margaret's voice echoed through the speakers, cruel and unmistakable. Hey, Blackie, go serve. The room fell silent. The CFO muttered, It's viral. Millions of views already. People are calling for boycotts. Margaret's hands shook. Delete it. Take it down. You can't delete the internet, Ethan said, his tone bitter. You humiliated the wrong woman. Across town, Ava Carter's office was a different kind of quiet, the kind built on control. The blinds were half drawn, letting the morning light paint long gold lines across the dark wood table. Jordan scrolled through the news feed, each headline a symphony of consequence. She looked up. They're unraveling Ava. Public relations disaster. Half their partners are distancing themselves already. Ava didn't smile, but her expression softened. Let the numbers speak. Jordan hesitated. They'll call. They'll beg. They already have, Ava said calmly, gesturing toward her muted phone. Its screen lit up again, Margaret Fairmont. She ignored it. Jordan exhaled. So, what's next? Ava leaned back, her voice low, deliberate. We redirect the funds. I don't want that money sitting idle. Integrity should circulate. Jordan blinked. To where? Ava's eyes met hers unwavering. To people who were never invited into rooms like that. She turned to the window. The city pulsed below skyscrapers, motion and greed, a network of systems that always assumed women like her were outsiders. Not today. Meanwhile, in the Fairmont penthouse, Margaret collapsed into a velvet armchair, makeup streaked, diamonds dull. The TV replayed her own laughter, looping endlessly like punishment. Commentators discussed systemic arrogance, racism in elite finance, Carter's silent revolution. She grabbed the remote, turned it off, and stared at her reflection in the black screen, a queen dethroned by her own words. Her husband entered quietly. The banks are calling. They're asking if Carter's pullout signals corruption. Margaret's voice broke. They can't do this to us. He looked at her for a long moment. No, Margaret. You did this to you. Back in her office, Ava picked up her coffee, still warm. Jordan's phone buzzed. The press wants a quote. Ava nodded. Send them this. Carter Global believes that integrity is the only real collateral. Nothing else. See many Timon, this kinnabrafting day. Jordan typed quickly, then looked up. You realize that's going to trend. Good, Ava said. Truth should. Outside, a camera drone hovered near the building. capturing her silhouette through the glass. The image, the woman who turned silence into consequence, was already becoming legend. And as she stood there, hands steady, the markets continued to crumble. But Ava? She didn't watch them fall. She watched the light shift across her desk, knowing balance had been restored. By noon, the city was watching. Screens lit up in cafes, on trading floors, in airport lounges, all replaying the same 20-second clip that started it all. Margaret Fairmont's laughter echoed across the internet, followed by that single line, "Hey, Blackie, go serve." It wasn't just a scandal now. It was a symbol. Fairmont Energy's logo appeared beneath every headline. Their stock had dropped 43% before lunch. Major partners were issuing statements of concern. One withdrew entirely. But inside Carter Global, the atmosphere was measured precise, calm. Ava Carter sat in her glass-walled office, a still point in the chaos. The skyline behind her shimmered, unbothered by the storm she had unleashed. Jordan entered quietly, holding a tablet. "It's everywhere," she said. CNN, BBC, Forbes, even Vogue Business. They're calling this the Carter Standard. Ava looked up, unamused. The world's just shocked that integrity can be decisive. Jordan hesitated. Margaret called again. Ava's eyes didn't move from the city. Let her call. Silence is her first lesson. At the Fairmont residence, the house was suffocating in noise. Reporters lined the gates. Photographers shouted her name. Every device in the room buzzed with incoming calls. Margaret sat on the grand staircase, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I understand," she said, voice trembling. "But you can't pull the loan. We've had this relationship for years." She paused, then closed her eyes. The voice on the other end didn't care. "Of course," she whispered. "We'll find another way." Her son entered, face pale, tie loosened. "The bank's freezing our accounts. They said your behavior violated their ethics clause." Margaret looked up at him, eyes rimmed red. "They're pretending to be moral now?" "No," he said. "They're pretending to be smart." The television played in the background Ava's voice, clipped from a business conference months ago. "We don't invest in people. We invest in principles. The people just reveal how solid those principles are." The irony hit like a verdict. Margaret's husband stepped into the room. "You need to apologize. Publicly. It's as Ryan spelled in four words." Her pride flickered. "Apologize? To her?" He didn't blink. "To yourself." Back at Carter Global, the air smelled of victory, but Ava treated it like paperwork routine, impersonal. Jordan approached her desk again. "They want a press appearance. Just one statement could define the story." Ava took a slow breath. "Then let it define itself." She turned her chair slightly toward the window. "Upload the official release, short and surgical." Jordan nodded, typing. "Ready." Ava recited. "Carter Global reaffirms that respect is not negotiable capital. MA1. The post went live. Within minutes, the internet detonated, reshared, quoted, dissected. Commentators called it the quietest clapback in corporate history. Others called it black excellence personified. Ava didn't react. She simply watched the clouds drift by, as if the entire world had slowed to match her pulse. Meanwhile, at the Fairmont estate, Margaret stared at her phone again. Ava's post appeared on every feed she opened. That single sentence, so simple, so measured, pierced deeper than any insult could. She threw the phone aside, chest heaving. "She's destroying us!" Her husband's voice came quietly from behind. "No, Margaret. You handed her the match." Margaret sank into the couch, tears smearing her mascara. For the first time in her life, silence surrounded her. Not applause, not gossip, not control, just silence. And in that silence, she finally began to hear herself. Across the river, Ava looked down at the city lights flickering in reflection. Her reflection stared back, composed, centered, certain. The world called it revenge. She called it rebalancing. By the next morning, Carter Global's headquarters was a storm of motion and poise. Analysts, lawyers, and communications teams moved through the corridors like quiet precision. No chaos, only order. Every headline in America now carried Ava Carter's name. The $900M lesson, Ava Carter redefines corporate accountability. Ava stood at the far end of the conference table, her reflection stretched across polished glass. The light pouring in from the panoramic windows framed her in gold. Jordan entered, a phone in hand. She's calling again. Ava didn't move. Put her through! A click, then a trembling voice. Ava, please. It's Margaret. Silence. The sound of breathing filled the line, uneven, desperate. Ava finally spoke. I'm listening. I said terrible things. I was drunk. It was stupid, and now the press, they're tearing me apart. That's not the press, Ava said softly. That's reflection. Margaret's voice cracked. Please, you can save us. The banks will listen to you. The media will stop if you issue a statement. Ava's tone was calm, deliberate, the same stillness that had silenced the ballroom days ago. You're asking me to fix what integrity broke. Margaret's breath caught. You think I deserve this? I don't think about you at all, Ava replied. Not anymore. There was a pause. Then quietly, what do you want from me? Ava's voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. To understand that wealth doesn't excuse ignorance, and that respect isn't a courtesy, it's a cost. Margaret whispered something half apology, half disbelief, but Ava had already ended the call. Jordan exhaled slowly. That was cold. Ava set the phone down. No, that was balanced. She looked out the window, her reflection merging with the skyline. She thought humiliation could be currency. I just returned her investment. Sitting was in a word. The texter. Jordan hesitated. What if people say you went too far? Ava turned, the faintest trace of a smile. Then they weren't listening when she did. Her voice lingered, quiet but absolute. Across town, the Fairmont penthouse had become a battlefield of silence. Reporters camped outside the gates. Investors withdrew. Former friends avoided calls. Margaret stood before the mirror in her dressing room, staring at the woman she had been, perfect hair, pearls, everything in place, and saw a stranger. The TV behind her replayed Ava's clip from a business summit. Power isn't about control, it's about clarity. The words echoed in the room like scripture. Her husband appeared in the doorway, exhausted. We're being audited. The foundation, the board, everything. Margaret swallowed hard. She's dismantling us, piece by piece. He shook his head. No, Margaret. She's teaching everyone else. This was rated. Margaret looked down at her diamond bracelet. It had been her shield for years. She unclasped it slowly, set it on the vanity, and whispered, maybe it's time someone else wears the crown. Back in her office, Ava opened a new file. The Carter Initiative. Jordan glanced at the header. You're really going through with it? Ava nodded. 900 million can do more good than the Fairmont name ever did. Jordan smiled. You just turned their empire into a foundation. Ava looked out at the horizon. Empires fall, but principles they compound. The city below glittered like consequence. Ava's reflection caught the morning light calm, certain, untouchable. By midweek, the Fairmont name had become a headline for ruin. Every newspaper, every financial site, every trending hashtag told the same story. From dynasty to downfall, the $900M reckoning. Is matter does nine. The once untouchable family had become the embodiment of arrogance undone. Outside their estate, camera crews stood in the rain, capturing the slow-motion collapse of an empire. Guards tried to block the gates, but even they knew the story had already escaped. Inside, Margaret Fairmont sat in her silk robe, hands clasped tight around a cup of untouched tea. The porcelain rattled faintly. Her husband walked in, phone pressed to his ear. They froze the accounts, he said quietly. Every line of credit, every partnership. Margaret didn't react. Her eyes were fixed on the television, where a commentator repeated the now viral line. When Carter Global pulled out, it wasn't just money that disappeared. It was credibility. Ethan, their son, paced near the window. We could issue a statement, he said. Admit fault. Donate something. People forgive when you act fast. They should not bottle one. And Margaret snapped her gaze toward him. Forgive? They want blood, not apologies. No, he said softly. They want what you took from her respect. The room went still. On the TV, a new headline flashed. Carter Global redirects $900M to Social Equity Fund. The camera cut to Ava Carter at a press conference podium, poised, composed, her tone measured. When systems fail to respect dignity, she said, capital must be re-educated. This is not punishment, it's correction. The audience erupted into applause. Margaret stared, pale, shaking her head. She's making me the villain. Her husband replied, no, you volunteered for the role. Across the city, Ava stepped down from the podium, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Jordan joined her, tablet in hand. It's official. The Carter Foundation is trending worldwide. Applications are pouring in from women-led startups, minority firms, education projects. Ava nodded calm. Good. Then the money's finally where it belongs. Jordan smiled faintly. People are calling it reparative capitalism. Ava glanced sideways. Let them call it whatever helps them sleep. I call it justice with interest. As they walked through the lobby, reporters shouted questions. Miss Carter, was this revenge? Did you intend to destroy the Fairmonts? Ava paused only once, turned slightly toward the cameras. I don't destroy. I redirect. Then she walked away, the flashbulbs chasing her like ghosts. At home that evening, Ava sat by the window, the skyline flickering across the glass like a heartbeat. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Margaret. She didn't open it. Instead, she scrolled through the hundreds of emails, flooding her inbox, thank you notes, testimonies, small victories from people she'd never met, but whose lives were now touched by her decision. Jordan texted from the office. Foundation already approved 32 projects. You changed everything. Ava typed one word back. We. She leaned back, eyes tracing the city lights. The night was quiet except for the hum of traffic below, life moving on. Balance restored. For the first time since the gala, Ava exhaled fully. Not with relief, but with confirmation. Power hadn't been reclaimed. It had been redefined. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered not in noise, but in the quiet that follows when the world finally understands. A week after the collapse, the Fairmont estate stood like an abandoned museum, tall, immaculate, and hollow. The media had moved on, but the silence it left behind was heavier than scandal. Inside, Margaret Fairmont wandered through her home barefoot, the marble cold under her feet. She moved past portraits of ancestors, paintings of men who'd built fortunes on arrogance and inheritance. Their faces seemed to mock her, now all of them crowned by power she no longer possessed. She stopped at the mirror near the grand staircase, the same mirror where a week ago she'd fixed her hair before humiliating Ava Carter. Now, her reflection stared back, age-stripped, unrecognizable. On the table beside her lay a thick envelope marked foreclosure notice. Her son Ethan entered quietly. The press wants an interview. They said it's your chance to own the narrative. Margaret shook her head. I've owned too many things already. It sounded well. It never. She walked toward the window, watching a delivery truck drive past Carter Foundation painted across its side. Her voice broke. She took everything. Ethan's reply was calm, almost tender. No. She just took back what we borrowed. Across town, the headquarters of the newly formed Carter Foundation buzzed with restrained optimism. Ava walked through the hall lined with photographs of young entrepreneurs, community leaders, and scholars' faces full of promise. The walls gleamed with new beginnings. Jordan followed with a folder in hand. These are the final allocations. Education fund, women-led startups, minority housing initiatives all cleared. Ava nodded. Make sure every recipient understands one rule. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Which is? Ava smiled faintly. Dignity first. Always. They entered the main conference room. Reporters filled the space, cameras ready. Ava stepped to the podium. The flash of lights painted her silhouette in gold and silver. She didn't raise her hand for attention. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. A week ago, she began, a partnership ended. Some called it retaliation. I call it recalibration. Integrity is not an accessory to success. It's the foundation beneath it. The Carter Foundation is not about charity. It's about correction. It's about giving access where arrogance once built walls. This isn't revenge. This is repair. The room fell silent. Reporters, usually vultures for controversy, simply listened. Ava paused, letting the stillness settle like truth finding its place. Then she stepped away from the podium without taking questions. The applause that followed wasn't loud, it was reverent. That night, Ava returned to her apartment overlooking the river. The city glowed beneath her, each light a reminder of motion of stories still unfolding. She poured herself a glass of wine and walked to the balcony. The wind carried faint echoes of laughter from the streets below, the kind not cruel but alive. She took out her phone, scrolled past hundreds of notifications, until one message stopped her, a short email from an unknown sender. Miss Carter, I worked for the Fairmonts for 17 years. When they let me go, I thought my life was over. Your foundation just funded my small bakery. Thank you for turning humiliation into hope. Gloria M. Ava smiled small, genuine, the kind that doesn't reach the lips but reshapes the soul. She looked out over the river, where the city lights rippled like currency exchanged for justice. Jordan's voice message buzzed in. The press is calling you the silent billionaire. Do we respond? It is the Shatterall bid. Ava hit record and replied simply, silence doesn't need PR. She set the phone down. Across the skyline, one building still bore the faded letters, Fairmont Energy. Tomorrow, contractors would replace them with something new, the Carter Institute for Ethical Finance. Ava would not attend the ceremony. She didn't need to. Her name didn't belong on walls, it belonged in actions. She closed the balcony doors, the hum of the city fading behind glass. For the first time in a long time, she sat not in power, not in victory, but in peace. She poured a small drop of wine into the sink, a quiet toast to what was lost and what was found. Power doesn't scream, she whispered. It recalculates. The skyline flickered back at her gold. Soft, infinite. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered not in noise, but in the quiet that follows when the world finally understands. A week after the collapse, the Fairmont estate stood like an abandoned museum, tall, immaculate, and hollow. The media had moved on, but the silence it left behind was heavier than scandal. Inside, Margaret Fairmont wandered through her home barefoot, the marble cold under her feet. She moved past portraits of ancestors, paintings of men who'd built fortunes on arrogance and inheritance. Their faces seemed to mock her now, all of them crowned by power she no longer possessed. She stopped at the mirror near the grand staircase, the same mirror where, a week ago, she'd fixed her hair before humiliating Ava Carter. Now her reflection stared back, age-stripped, unrecognizable. On the table beside her lay a thick envelope marked foreclosure notice. Her son, Ethan, entered quietly. The press wants an interview. They said it's your chance to own the narrative. Scattered. Margaret shook her head. I've owned too many things already. She walked toward the window, watching a delivery truck drive past Carter Foundation painted across its side. Her voice broke. She took everything. Ethan's reply was calm, almost tender. No, she just took back what we borrowed. Across town, the headquarters of the newly formed Carter Foundation buzzed with restrained optimism. Ava walked through the hall lined with photographs of young entrepreneurs, community leaders, and scholars, faces full of promise. The walls gleamed with new beginnings. Jordan followed with a folder in hand. These are the final allocations: education fund, women-led startups, minority housing initiatives, all cleared. Ava nodded. Make sure every recipient understands one rule. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Which is? Ava smiled faintly. Dignity first. Always. See Act Sadagatable with 3 and Renjin. It succumbs who passed about. They entered the main conference room. Reporters filled the space, cameras ready. Ava stepped to the podium. The flash of lights painted her silhouette in gold and silver. She didn't raise her hand for attention. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. A week ago, she began, a partnership ended. Some called it retaliation. I call it recalibration. Integrity is not an accessory to success, it's the foundation beneath it. The Carter Foundation is not about charity. It's about correction. It's about giving access where arrogance once built walls. This isn't revenge, this is repair. The room fell silent. Reporters, usually vultures for controversy, simply listened. Ava paused, letting the stillness settle like truth finding its place. Then she stepped away from the podium without taking questions. The applause that followed wasn't loud, it was reverent. That night, Ava returned to her apartment overlooking the river. The city glowed beneath her, each light a reminder of motion of stories still unfolding. She poured herself a glass of wine and walked to the balcony. The wind carried faint echoes of laughter from the streets below, the kind not cruel but alive. She took out her phone, scrolled past hundreds of notifications, until one message stopped her, a short email from an unknown sender. Miss Carter, I worked for the Fairmonts for 17 years. When they let me go, I thought my life was over. Your foundation just funded my small bakery. Thank you for turning humiliation into hope. Gloria M. Ava smiled small, genuine, the kind that doesn't reach the lips but reshapes the soul. She looked out over the river, where the city lights rippled like currency exchanged for justice. Jordan's voice message buzzed in. The press is calling you the silent billionaire. Do we respond? Ava hit record and replied simply, silence doesn't need PR. She set the phone down. Across the skyline, one building still bore the faded letters, Fairmont Energy. Tomorrow, contractors would replace them with something new. The Carter Institute for Ethical Finance. Ava would not attend the ceremony. She didn't need to. Her name didn't belong on walls, it belonged in actions. She closed the balcony doors, the hum of the city fading behind glass. For the first time in a long time, she sat not in power, not in victory, but in peace. She poured a small drop of wine into the sink, a quiet toast to what was lost and what was found. Power doesn't scream, she whispered. It recalculates. The skyline flickered back at her gold, soft, infinite. A month later, dawn broke over the city like forgiveness. Ava stood on the rooftop terrace of her new headquarters, a cup of black coffee in hand. Below her, the skyline glowed, not with noise, but with consequence. The building across the street now bore its new sign, the Carter Institute for Ethical Finance. The gold letters caught the morning sun. Jordan approached softly. The board wants to know if you'll speak at the opening. Ava smiled. No speeches. Let the building speak. She set her coffee down and watched as the city came alive, every street humming with possibility. Behind her, the wind lifted the edge of her coat, the same color as sunrise, bright, resilient, unstoppable. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the quiet she had earned. Justice doesn't need applause, she whispered. It only needs memory. Yes, the exacts. And with that, she turned toward the elevator, her reflection catching the last gold shimmer of light. A woman who had not just won, but redefined what winning meant. Balance restored. Silence crowned. Ava Carter unshaken.